thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Badlands Podcast, the only podcast out there that is 100% chiseled and is proudly part of the Chairshot Media Group. I am Mags, and I'm pleased to be joined again by my podcast wife, Mr. Paul Talley. Paul, how are you?
All right, I got you eventually. Sorry to hold you up.
I'm there twiddling my thumbs thinking, where is Paul? He's gone to Nicaragua for these coffee beans. And it's been proven today, apparently, that we aren't the same person and that I'm not just putting on a Welsh accent.
Was that a theory?
Allegedly so, according to Andy across at Bang Bang. We were maybe the same person, I was just putting on a dodgy Welsh accent.
See, I'm sure you would be able to put the accent on, but you wouldn't be able to come up to my standard of picks. You can't fake
I wouldn't
that.
be able to lower myself that low. Yeah, you're right. But let's introduce today's guest. He's one of the most interactive people on wrestling Twitter. Really kind of like trying to spark conversation and debate with his posts. It's Stewart Lawson. Stewart, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this one.
Not a problem at all. So yeah, like I said, you really kind of try and create conversations and discourse on social media. How are you finding that? How's that going for you?
I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. So basically, I've not really been in it for that long with Twitter. I only had about 40 followers until September, just 2020 there. But I love discussions. I love hearing other people's opinions on things because, you know, everyone's got an opinion and everyone's opinion is right in their own rights, if that makes sense. But we all know what Twitter's like in regards to how we can have arguments and discussions and trolls, etc. But that's not what I'm after. I want to hear... I have a really weird sense of like minds, and whatever pops into my head, I want to talk about it. So my aim is just to get everyone having a nice vibe, having everyone's opinion, you know, discussed and respected in that, and just have a laugh with it, really, because that's what it's all about nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole vibe of this show, is to have discussion and debate and a laugh. There's been times where we've literally got proper bellyache from laughing on this show. It's so fun. You've had a dalliance into content creation. Are there any signs of you maybe coming back into that field? Is it something that you might be looking to do, or is that like a one and done kind of thing?
I wouldn't say it's a one and done kind of thing. I was on a podcast previously and I really did enjoy my time, but I just felt, you know, the direction that podcast was going, it wasn't kind of my vibe anymore. And, you know, good luck to them. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing just now. I am currently in discussions with other podcasts with the chance of me returning. I work for the railway, so it's not easy for me to be available every week of the time. So it'll just totally depend on what's happening. But I'm not, like Sean Connery said, never say never, and I'm saying the exact same thing. Never say never. If the right option comes along, good. I'm all for it. I'm not in the game by any means. I'm enjoying what I'm doing just now, though, and that'll not change.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the more people doing content and more people getting the voice out there, the better. So if you do decide to kind of like venture back into it, definitely hit me up. I'll add you to my rotation instantly. So yeah, it'd be cool to have you in this creation world that we're in.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, Stewart, you have never been on Badlands before, so what we like to do with our first-time guests is get their Mount Rushmore of their greatest wrestlers of all time, and a little bit of a reason why you picked those ones, and then Mr. Tully, the resident accountant of Badlands, can total the scores up and add them to the collated list. So,
Right.
who's your four guys and gals?
Firstly, fuck you for making me pick just 4 because that was near enough impossible.
I mean, it's off the mountain. I mean, we'd have 20 on the mountain if we could.
I was genuinely about to get my pickaxe out and start putting a 5th one on here, but I never bothered. So what I've done is I've kind of I didn't want to duplicate things. Okay, so there are people I want to discuss later on that I've not put on my Mount Rushmore purely for that reason. I don't even want to talk about the same person twice. So the first one for me, I'm going to go in like date order if that's right with you guys. First one for me has got to be the Macho Man Randy Savage. He's number 1 for me on that Mount Rushmore, and the reason is because my very, very first memory of wrestling was WrestleMania 7. And the one match that always stands out for me is the career versus career Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. And I think I must have been about, I don't know, I want to say I was about 9, 10. So it would have been a few years after WrestleMania 7 happened. But I always remember being totally taken away by Randy Savage, who was the heel at that point when he came out with Sensational Sherry. But just the flamboyance of the man, he was just unbelievable. And then obviously looking further back, the Steamboat match at WrestleMania 3, I done a few facts on him last night as well, and he was only one of 10 people to hold the title for 365 days, the WWF or WWE title. But I didn't know he was only one of 2 people, along with Morales, to hold the world and intercontinental title for more than 365 days. So that just shows you how much of a legend he is.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know. I thought it was weird that Pedro Morales, and Savage are the only 2 that have done it.
Wow.
Macho only ever held the Intercontinental title one time as well, and he's so linked with that title. It's amazing that he just had that one run. Yeah,
totally. But I mean, going back to like he retired obviously with in WrestleMania 7, but then going forward, he done the Jake the Snake Roberts angle with the snake biting him in the arm. You know, that's iconic. I mean, and then his WCW run, he wasn't finished after WWE. He wanted to do more, and he went over to WCW and done remarkably well over there. Just, I felt wherever he was, he was a macho man. You couldn't keep your eyes off him. So that's number 1. That's number 1 for me.
We've literally just covered all that run of from 1990 into 1991 on another podcast that we call that 90s wrestling podcast. We've been looking at all the pay-per-views, and Jake and Macho Man were literally the stars of all that kind of period. Really kind of stood out. So yeah, it's a great pick.
Yeah, they own that. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, he was so flamboyant, and he was just, even like at SummerSlam 92, where he had the second Ultimate Warrior match, he was just everything. He was fucking brilliant. So next one for me has got to be Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, Darren, you killed me, mate, by telling me that you were being blocked by the man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll tell you the tale. I will tell you this tale. I'm a massive Stone Cold fan. When I was at the heart of my wrestling fandom, he was my boy. But I was I was tagged in a thread on Twitter, and the conversation got to pegging. Now, I don't know if you know what pegging is.
I know what pegging is.
Right, okay. I'm not going to explain it. If you want to find it, listeners, go and Google it. But Stone Cold was...
Google it, though. Not safe for work.
Yeah. But Stone Cold was tagged in that thread as well. So he just mass blocked everybody in that thread, and I got a block for it. So one of my wrestling heroes blocked me because of something I was not involved in.
How did it possibly come to be that Stone Cold got tagged in that phrase?
Graham Bagshaw snitched.
No,
he did. He snitched.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I was, you'll know that about my Twitter. I always look at things positively. Mm-hmm. Stone Cold has went into your account to block you. Think of it that way.
Well, yeah, he knew who I was for that 1 second. He knew who I was. I mean, I've also been blocked by CM Punk, and I still to this day have no idea why, because I have never spoke about him on wrestling Twitter until after he blocked me. Then I just call him a cunt all the time.
So going back to my second pick, I've got to be Stone Cold Steve Austin, because I mean, I always look at Stone Cold and you think he was good. He wasn't great. He was good. I always think that. And then I watch him, I think, nah, the boy was fucking amazing. You know, like, for someone to be not really... I probably get heat for saying this, but I don't see him as a full-time wrestler because obviously the injury that he had, a lot of it was more of a on the mic skills. And it just shows you how good he was because he was always at the main event. He was always top of the tree, but didn't have to be in the ring to do that. You know, he just created this whole aura about him, and he had, in my opinion, the best two rivalries there is going to be in professional wrestling. I don't think anyone's going to top those two rivalries between The Rock and Vince McMahon. So he's had like obviously the most iconic moments as well, like the beer truck when he came to the ring with that, the Mike Tyson flip off, the Austin 316, King of the Ring speech. When he held the gun to Vince McMahon's head and he says, Mick Austin 316 says, I just pissed your pants. The DX Express, I could go on. The guy was just phenomenal, and I genuinely don't think of anyone who's had the two pops that really, really stick to my head are the pop where he came out at the January 3rd, 1999 or 98 when Mick Foley won the title off The Rock, the famous, that's going to put butts on seats. That pop was just incredible. And the one that people forget about quite a lot is Backlash 2000 when Triple H lost the title to The Rock. He came back after being away for such a long time. That was incredible. He came out with a steel chair and smashed Pat Patterson, rest in peace Pat Patterson, Jared Briscoe, McMahon's, Triple H, everything. The guy was just, he was just money. You know what I mean? He was just so cool. Everyone wanted to be him.
Yeah. And I think what also gets kind of like lost in the shuffle with Austin is how versatile he was. I mean, you remember back when he was in WCW, he was almost a half flyer wrestler. Comes to WWE and he was the kind of like cold, stone-faced killer. Then he was the anti-hero, and then he was the comedy guy. He had so many strings to his bow, and in such a compact career in the top of the card at WWF. Yeah, it's a great pick, and it's amazing that such a short run, and yet 30 years on, we're still calling him one of the best.
100%. And adapting as well, because he was a wrestler, a technical wrestler in WCW, and became more of a brawler due to the broken neck. It just again goes to show with the versatility of the man.
Yeah, absolutely. Great second pick.
So third is his partner in crime, The Rock. I've got to put him in there. I mean, and go right off the bat of what you said there, Darren, regarding such a short period of time. The Rock was only in wrestling for 6.5 years, and that's from like Rocky Maivia all the way to Hollywood Rock. But you think he was there for like decades because he was such a high character. He was such a big personality in regards to where he was at the top of the list. Here's a question for you though. See, when I say Rock as a champion, what championship do you think of him with?
You'd say the world title because he was on the top of the card so much. But I think he was more of an intercontinental level champion. Yeah.
Because if you take away his run that he had when he beat CM Punk at Royal Rumble, I think that was 74 days. He actually had the IC title more than he had the WWE title because he had such short. But you always remember him with that title.
I mean, that's the same with Austin. To be fair, I mean, he only had one relatively long run, and it kind of shows that they didn't need the title. They didn't need to have the title. No,
I totally agree. I mean, but then you also think of The Rock. Is there anybody better than him on the mic than The Rock? I can't. I genuinely, there isn't anyone better than him. And the guy, I genuinely put The Rock as the greatest person that can be babyface and heel and be equally as good on both sides of the spectrum there, because it doesn't matter if he was a heel, doesn't matter if he was a babyface. He was always on top of his game. You've got other people like Triple H, for instance, who was an absolute fantastic heel. He was a good babyface, but he wasn't a great. He was better as a heel, than he was as a face. Whereas The Rock was equally as good on both sides of it. So that's my third one.
Yeah, great pick. I mean, I still go back and watch his Dear Billy promo. That's just one of the most comical things I've ever seen in wrestling. It's so good.
Or the Toronto one where he done the Rock concert near the end at the Hollywood.
Yeah, was it not Sacramento?
Was it Sacramento? I was Sacramento.
I think
he had a point though. Sacramento
was the Toronto one not where he sung the 12 Days of Christmas to Test?
Possibly, right. Aye, but yeah, that's what I mean. Though he was just great regardless.
Yeah, I mean, you could ram off dozens of his mark skills. I mean, and he wasn't a slouch in the ring as well.
No.
He could still sell a match. I mean, the match with Hogan.
He was the greatest Stone Cold Stunner seller in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the match with Hogan.
Scott Hall had one good sell. The Rock had a catalogue.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the match with Hogan at WrestleMania 18 will stand out to me as one of the greatest things that's ever happened at WrestleMania.
Totally agree, and you got to look at that match as well. In the first 2-3 minutes, they were just looking at the crowd, and the crowd was just on fire the whole way. You know, I genuinely felt sorry for. Was it Jericho Triple H that followed that?
Triple H, yeah.
I felt sorry for them because I think Jericho's openly said that he was like, "I fucking hate this," because how can you top that match? Because it wasn't a 5-star match, but it was just such a good match.
It should have gone on last.
Yeah,
it's insane. It wasn't a main event.
Yeah,
I know.
Madness.
Totally agree.
Who's your last pick then, sir?
Last one is John Cena. And it was a weird one for me because you could have looked at Taker, you could have looked at HBK, Bret Hart, all the rest of it. But see, when you look at John Cena, he's someone that you think of when he was there. You think, oh, I actually put a tweet about this yesterday, I think it was, that when he was around at the time, you're thinking, Christ's sake, is that John Cena again? But now that he's gone and you're looking back, you think, Jesus Christ, how good was he actually there? Because arguably the PG is the hardest era anyone's ever had in WWE because of how limited you were to what you could do and what you could say, whereas John Cena carried that whole era, SmackDown and Raw, I would, my opinion, on his back and brought them through. And again, we're talking about mic skills with The Rock. I think John Cena's up there. He's not as good as The Rock, but when you put a mic in John Cena's hand, you know, I always remember the Roman Reigns face-off that they had, where he absolutely destroyed Roman Reigns, to the point you're actually watching it with like your hands back in front of your face and you're thinking, oh yeah, is he really taking this? Because John Cena killed him on the mic. And another thing as well about John Cena is everyone talks about like the 5 moves of Cena or the 6 moves of Cena. When he wanted to go, he could go. I always remember the one night stand 2006 ECW where he fought against Rod Van Dam. That was a great match. Cena really took it, you know, to the absolute high standard there. And also the same with CM Punk at Money in the Bank 2011. You know, that was a 5-star match, which shows you how good it was. So John Cena and obviously with the whole being hated for being such a babyface, a lot of people would crumble under that, but it just shows you the mentality of John Cena, that he thrived on that and he worked on that and it worked so well, you know, with the Let's Go Cena sucks. So yeah, I realise I've kind of rambled on a bit here, but there we go. That's my Mount Rushmore. I'm happy with that.
It's an absolutely stellar Mount Rushmore. 4 huge personalities, and all of them have got one thing in common: how good they were on the mark and how good they were at connecting with audiences. Yes, I think they're 4 stellar picks.
Thank you.
Very, very, very strong Rushmore. And that mixed fingers up at the top because for the first time ever, Stone Cold has the same amount of votes as Ric Flair.
Wow.
So Ric Flair has been our front runner, I mean, ever since we started doing this. And he's finally been caught by someone, and that person, Steve Austin. And we've got John Cena is kind of hunting down The Undertaker and Chris Jericho now to be the best of the rest. So wow. he's only 3 behind Chris Jericho now. And again, that gap was massive previously. So we still got the same 4: Ric Flair, The Rock, Steve Austin, and Hulk Hogan. But Cena's hunting them down.
Good.
And how is the Badlands screw job going on?
Badlands screw job remains untouched at 13 apiece. Shawn Michaels 13, Bret Hart 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, Stewart, that was a stellar Mount Rushmore. So let's get into this main topic.
Yes.
It was actually told to me today that by Paul that we'd actually covered this topic before, and I had absolutely no recognition of it whatsoever. But I went back and checked my like notes from previous episode, and I've literally gone with pretty much exactly the same pick, so I must have had it.
So you've done no work for this then? So you've done no work for this. So you've came in late and you've got no work at all for this.
Right. I told you in the DMs I'd done 1,800 words for this one. My original one was like 700, so I've gone way in depth on this one.
I picked different the last time, but I was doing my research earlier.
Yeah.
You've gone one different. I was doing my research earlier. I was thinking, I'm sure I've written all of this before. Getting really strong deja vu, but unlike deja vu, it just wasn't going away. And
I mean, we've done 110 episodes now, I think. So
yeah,
it's the first time we've ever clashed like this, I suppose.
I mean, that's a good excuse, but we only did it about 2 months ago.
Wow, that is horrific. That is horrific.
But no, there's so many of these that you can.
COVID-19 vaccinations are available now at Meijer for those that are eligible. Text COVID to 75049 to register for your free vaccinations at Meijer and get updates to your phone. Please complete only one registration at one location. Additional entries will replace your previous registration and may increase your wait time. You can also talk to your Meijer pharmacist or visit clinic.meijer.com for more information. Remember, just text COVID to 75049 to get started.
There was one this week. We could easily have brought up the one that happened this very week.
Yeah.
For context, we're talking about Big Show and his monumentous move to AEW. What a shot across the bow that is.
By the way, that's a huge move. I was saying, I don't know if you've seen it on my Twitter, I think it's a great move for AEW because it's the name. You know, it's a WWE. Okay, it was WCW, but he's been in WWE for how long now?
24 years.
Going for him, and you would never have thought that he would move over. Never in a million years.
I thought he was a laugher. I honestly thought he'd be a producer or a road agent, something like that.
But it's just, I mean, AEW, I think, in my opinion, AEW are doing everything right now. I really do. I think, they're getting everyone talking. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. They're getting everyone talking and they're getting everyone interested in the product.
It was #1 trending across the world within a minute of it happening, so it's absolutely the right thing to be done. Yeah. I mean,
the Big Show.
Yeah, the Big Show and AEW were #1 trending. Yeah,
Wow.
And then Mick Foley tagged some cow and beef SFT.
That was brilliant.
That's what I said. AEW says yes to independence.
Wow. So on that note, let's go into your first pick then, Stuart. What's your first wrestling defection?
So what I've done here is I've kind of looked at it in regards to either what they've done since the move or what they've done for the move, if that makes sense. So my number one, and this is why I wasn't in my Mount Rushmore, my number one is Hulk Hogan moving to WCW. You could speak to anybody, it doesn't matter if they're a wrestling fan or not, everyone knows who Hulk Hogan is. Your grandma knows who Hulk Hogan is. You know, he was just, at that time as well, he was the biggest name, arguably, in the world, along with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, my opinion anyway. Again, he was obviously such a huge WWF named, you know, obviously, what was he, 6-time champion, headlined numerous WrestleManias. For him to retire as such, that famous word in wrestling, and then for obviously Ted Turner to bring over WCW and then bring in Hulk Hogan was an absolute massive move. You know, he legitimized, in my opinion, WCW. He made them a force to be reckoned with before it was really even off the bat. You know, obviously they had a previous background with Jim Crockett Promotions and all that kind of stuff, but you know, they really made them a mainstream, you know, television program just by having Hulk Hogan there. And what I have to say is WCW, they worked with him brilliantly. You know, the first match they ever had was against Ric Flair for the WCW title. You know, that was a match that should have been in WWF territory. That should have been WrestleMania, but for some reason they let Randy Savage go against Flair, which was a great match, don't get me wrong, but everyone wanted to see Ric Flair against Hulk Hogan because it was like a Muhammad Ali against Mike Tyson. You know, it was one of these dream matches that everyone wanted to see, and for them not to do it was just stupid in my opinion. But again, the reason I've put him there is because of what he done. Whether it was sole purpose was to piss McMahon off and really make him, you know, buried under the bankruptcy or whatever, he did a really good job at trying to do that, because obviously with the whole heel turn, the greatest heel turn in professional wrestling, in my opinion, that'll never be rectified. It'll never be duplicated. It was just a total wow factor when he moved to the NWO, and then moving forward, what he done with the NWO, he was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic. And my biggest memory of him as well is the Goldberg match at Georgia, Atlanta, in the Dome against Goldberg, on Nitro, where he dropped the title to him. That was one of the best ever free television matches I think that's ever happened. Not in regards to the match itself, but to the star standard and to really the whole electricity of it. And yeah, I have to put Hulk Hogan number one in my Mount Rushmore for moving over.
Yeah, so it's an obvious pick. I mean, it's one that I actually haven't put on either my original research or this research, but I totally get why you have it was a massive move, and it legitimised WCW. It's as simple as that. It made them those kind of like disenfranchised fans stand up and think, wow, this is big.
But not only just that, as well, by having the name of Hulk Hogan in your roster, that brought over your Lex Lugers, your Randy Savages, your Nasty Boys, and all these other people as well, because they thought, well, if Hulk Hogan's there, that must be a legit program. Let's go over and let's see what's happening over there.
Yeah, and he was very much integral to that, because he knew he could work with these people. He knew that they were safe, and he played a big hand in bringing a lot of those people in. And it's interesting you mentioned about the Ric Flair match. We, like I said, we've been covering that whole era on another podcast, and the plans for WWE when Ric Flair came over was to have that match, but they tried it in the house shows, and it apparently went over basically like a fart in church. So that's why the plans changed, and they went with Macho Man over Hogan. But yeah, it's a great pick.
It's a fantastic pick. I think I put it on last time, if I remember rightly, because it is just it's a momentum shifter.
Yeah.
But not good enough to put on this one, though.
like I said, I try to challenge myself and go for different picks this time.
So I think it's my turn to go first this week, Paul, and I might as well use the one that I didn't mention last episode. So let's go back to 1999. And in that period, WCW was very, very political. It was quite a hard place to work if you weren't a big star. You didn't have creative control. If you were on the undercard, you were kept down. You were frustrated. You struggled to get your name on pay-per-views. And around this time, WCW started to offer wrestlers who were not happy their unequivocal releases. And one of the first people to take that offer up was Scott Levy, also known as Raven. He went back to his stomping grounds of ECW. But this move inspired a group of people to all conspire to jump ship at the same time. So you had Chris Benoit, you had Dean Malenko, you had Perry Saturn, and you had Eddie Guerrero, all defecting to the WWF in one fell swoop. So at the time of their move, Benoit was actually the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. He just won the vacant title by beating Sid Vicious at Sold Out. But the truth behind that was that the head booker, Kevin Sullivan, decided to give Benoit the title as a kind of like a peace offering and an attempt to keep him in WCW, because those two had been at each other's throats for months over Kevin Sullivan thinking that Benoit was having an affair with his wife, Nancy, which he ended up actually having an affair, and they would end up getting married. So on Nitro, it was actually stated that Benoit's title win was not valid because Sid had his foot under the ropes. But if you check the WWE record books, it's actually the title win still stands, and Benoit is recognised as the WCW champion. So the four guys appeared on Raw, January 31st, 2000. They were there as the guests of Mick Foley. and they were quickly involved in a storyline where they were trying to win contracts, and they had to face off different members of DX in a series of matches. So you had Malenko, he faced X-Pac. He lost after a low blow. You had Guerrero and Saturn, who lost to the New Age Outlaws. And then you had Chris Benoit, who lost to Triple H, even though he had Triple H tapping to the crossface. But the ref, unfortunately, was unconscious. But these performances meant that the WWE were willing to give them contracts, and they all ended up having various levels of success in the WWE. Saturn would be a hardcore champion, a European champion. He also would find love in the WWE with Moppe. Then you had Malenko, who was kind of like the fixture in the lightweight division. He then transitioned to a backstage role and now obviously works heavily with AEW. And then you had Eddie and Chris, who ended up both being world champions at WWE. And then obviously the famous WrestleMania moment where they both were champions at the same time. Unfortunately, they both weren't long for the earth and passed away soon after. Eddie from acute heart failure from the years of abuse and alcohol abuse and substance abuse that had caught up with him, despite him having a significant lifestyle change. And then obviously Benoit was in way more gruesome circumstances with the double murder suicide. But yeah, my first pick is 1999 and the defection of the Radicals.
So is that's your Mount Rushmore finish then?
Yeah, pretty much. All four of them. Yeah.
I have to say, by the way, that's a great shout. But I have to also say that what an entrance they had! What a debut! You know, they're sitting in the front row with Road Dogg as well, and they got in a scrap with the Road Dogg. Is that right?
Yeah, Road Dogg hit. I think Road Dogg hit Saturn.
That's right. And and Perry Saturn with the mop, man. That was brilliant, man. That was all because he had was that not because someone gave him a potato and he went fucking Raj?
Yeah, a guy called a jobber called Matt Bell. He strung on him, so Perry Saturn went in a bit heavy. So Vince gave him mop and it absolutely worked until Raven and Terry Runnels fed her through a wood chipper.
Is that it? It's a great pick, and for me, it's kind of it's linked to the Hulk Hogan pick that Stewart made, in that it kind of symptomatic of where WCW went wrong, because they started really going for the big names who were at the end of their career, and letting go amazing talent. And say what you like about Vince, I don't buy into this bullshit. He hasn't got an eye for talent. He's got an amazing eye for talent, and he was taking WCW's best talent for the next, as you say, Eddie and Chris Benoit. Unfortunately, what happened, but they would have had long careers after that. Chris Jericho obviously had a very long career. Vince basically pulled the rug out from under them by taking talent like that.
And it really went full circle. That between Stewart's first pick and my first pick, that's the kind of boom period of WCW in a nutshell. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. That's the rise and fall of WCW right there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't need to watch DVD, guys. You just listen to this podcast.
but apparently they got their no compete clause overturned because I can't remember who it was, but someone who works high up in WCW threatened Eddie Guerrero with a knife, and Eddie Guerrero reported it, and they were able to get their no compete clause taken out and appear for WWF straight away.
Well, they were meant to be bringing Shane Douglas with them, and they all conspired to not bring Shane Douglas. So it didn't only just get screwed by the Clique and that group, but also the Radicals didn't really want much to do with him.
No wonder he hates WWE. Yeah. Would they have came back as Dean? That's my only question. Or would they came as Shane?
We need to do a Mount Rushmore of nearly men one day. People who are on the cusp of greatness but never quite. Got dropped the last minute. Pete Best.
You need a fucking series of that, no one episode.
So, Stuart, let's go to you, sir, for your... I mean, I'm jumping ahead, Paul. Is that staying on our Mount Rushmore? Are you going to use your power veto?
Great pick. I love it.
Yeah, brilliant. Stuart, let's go to you, sir, for your second pick.
Okay, so my second pick is going to 2006. My Alexa's just came on. Oh, fucking weirdo. 2006, just after the new ECW was arised, a certain Olympic gold medalist was very open in regards to what he was. I don't know. Have you seen the Stone Cold Broken Skull with Kurt Angle?
I don't think I've seen it yet.
Basically, Vince McMahon, I think it was the Marine, was supposed to be to Kurt Angle, and he was obviously looking forward to that because it'll give him a break so he can recover and all the rest. Obviously, they eventually went to John Cena, but I'm using Kurt Angle moving to TNA as my next one, and the reason behind that is what he did for TNA. So at the time, obviously in 2006, the roster consisted of like your Road Dogs, Billy Gunn, Team 3D, Jeff Hardy, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, and Sting, all massive names. But I genuinely believe that Kurt Angle was the first WWE person to move over, because you could argue that about Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, but the way they left, and Jeff Hardy as well, with what was going on in his personal life, you obviously knew why they were no longer with the WWE. But Kurt Angle was a massive change. You know, obviously they had Sting and, like I say, and Steiner and Nash and Team 3D were a very, very powerful names in the wrestling world. But the pop that Kurt Angle got when he came up with the USA flag and the music hit him was just absolutely incredible. And I genuinely believe that TNA at that moment was recognised as the second company in the world, whereas previously they were kind of still looked upon as the NWA indie type company, whereas with Kurt Angle being there, it solidified them as a proper, company. Because I genuinely believe that Kurt Angle was the best in the world at that point in terms of wrestling ability, and I think he's absolutely one of the best there's ever been. And his best years were with TNA. Everyone remembers him WWE, but I genuinely think his best years of wrestling were with TNA, and what he done there was absolutely amazing. And like I say, he made TNA a force. And not only that, what else he done? He moved. He kind of had the leverage to let TNA go to like New Japan Pro Wrestling. If you remember, Kurt Angle came back with the IWGP title. He took off Brock Lesnar. Did he take off Brock Lesnar? He took off Brock Lesnar, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Whether it was a real one or not is another question. I think that was an Okies one, but that's neither by the by. But what I mean by that is he genuinely did make TNA such a big force, and he was there for so long, and he turned eyes massively on that one. And I genuinely remember the time when Kurt Angle turned up on TNA, and I thought, holy shit, this is a company, because at the moment they were making a buzz, they were doing well, they were there or thereabouts. But I thought having Kurt Angle and Sting on that roster really solidified them as the second company.
Yeah. It's another great pick, and a lot of people don't realise that Kurt spent more of his wrestling career actually in TNA than he did in WWE. And I still remember when he was the belt collector, he was literally every champion in TNA. And if that happened now, it looked ridiculous that one person had all the titles. But in TNA at that time, it looked legitimate because Kurt was a wrestling machine.
100%.
And the more surprising thing, and for me, it just shows how good he was. He was battling like painkiller addiction and a broken neck at that time, and was still putting on like the best wrestling in the world. It's just he's an absolute machine
with a broken freaking neck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a shocker when he went to TNA, because he's at his peak.
Yeah,
we talked at the opening of the show about kind of the Big Show going to AEW. This was that decade's kind of Moxley to AEW.
Yeah,
because it wasn't someone at the twilight of their career. He was peak, like you say, doing the best stuff of his career.
And for them, for a kind of company who's seen as like an indie type one, to have somebody like that on the roster, I genuinely thought it turned a lot of heads. There's no question about that. It made a lot of eyes go onto that product. With what they've done with it, that's another conversation. But I genuinely thought it gave them a real good chance at making something of it.
Yeah. Do you know the reason he left?
Yeah, it was not because he wanted to take a break because of addiction. Yeah, addiction.
Oh, so he wanted to take a break from WWF.
Yeah, he asked Vince for his release, and he said to Vince, "Yeah, I do want to come back. I just need some time off." And Vince granted him, and then he went to TNA.
And it was because he never got the Marine job. Because with him, if he was getting the Marine film, he would have been off TV for 12 weeks, something, and he thought that would be enough time to recover and come back full steam. But because John Cena got it, he was like, "Nah, fuck that, I need to go."
Oh. The Marine was part of Punk's reasons for leaving as well, wasn't it? It's more trouble than it's worth, that movie.
Punk's got a lot of fucking issues, let's be honest here.
But it's exactly, he was promised it, and then they gave it to The Miz. So
that Marine 3, to be fair, they done him a favour.
Fuck knows what number it was.
It was either going to be the Marine 3 or his UFC career. Both of them were a fucking disaster. There's no point.
I mean, when Ken Kennedy is the Marine before you're the Marine, you want to like consider whether you're in the right company, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't think you really want to be the Marine.
I mean, how many Marines have there been in WWE? Randy Orton was the Marine once.
Yes.
Kennedy, Cena, Miz.
Was Ted DiBiase one as well?
Yeah, he was.
He was, yeah. Austin wasn't a Marine, was he? What was Austin?
The Condemned.
The Condemned.
Movie that is, by the way. Vinnie Jones. Oh, by the way.
Yeah, but another great pick. Collie, your first pick.
Right then. I'm going to go for Mr. Hulk Hogan.
To WCW.
But not to WCW.
TNA.
No, not the TNA. It's amazing how many Hulk Hogans you could put in. But I'm going for Hulk Hogan from AWA to WWF.
Yeah.
Because it was an absolute monumental clanger by AWA, and it was the making of WWF. It was huge to kind of create WWF as it is today. So Hogan, he had a brief period with WWF previously, which didn't really go anywhere, and then he left, did a bit of time in New Japan, and then obviously his big Hollywood break came when he was cast as Thunderlips in Rocky III in 1981. Now, apparently, this Vince Sr. was in charge of WWF back then, and he was not interested in crossover mainstream appeal at all. He thought it opened up the business too much and gave too much away, so it kind of killed Hogan's chances of going back to WWF dead. But AWA saw the potential in it, and brought him in for the kind of, again, for that crossover appeal and for the kind of publicity it would generate. So he went to AWA very quickly. Obviously, he'd been in the film, so he was already immensely popular, and he very quickly became the top babyface and started to generate that kind of Hulkamania vibe that would go on to become kind of legendary. But although AWA were keen to harness that marketing power of Hulk Hogan, they were led at the time back by Vern Gagne, and he's a traditionalist who believed the best wrestler should be at the top of the company. And that kind of manifested himself as he was top of the company for a long, long time. And when he retired, he handpicked Nick Bockwinkel to succeed him and do much the same. He thought he's the best wrestler in the company, and he should hold the title the majority of the time. And so what will follow is something that I think is kind of unthinkable, really, if you put a modern day wrestling context on it. But they never made Hulk Hogan the world champion, despite how popular he was. He went into a series of matches with Bockwinkel, and every single one would end in a DQ or a screwy finish. There was one that Hulk Hogan won, only for it to be overturned several days later by the management. So even though he was far and away their best, the most valuable star, they just wouldn't make him world champion because he wasn't the best wrestler. So while this is going on, the WWF passes to Vince Jr., who, as we know, loves the crossover appeal and loves the mainstream appeal, and that's very much his thing, and that's the direction he wanted to take WWF. So he capitalized on Hulk Hogan's frustration, and in 1983 he signed him. Like I say, taking away AWA's biggest star and very quickly creating WWF's biggest star. And then Hogan would kind of, him leaving, you said when he went to WCW, a lot of talent followed him. Similar here, as the years went by, a lot of talent followed Hogan from AWA to WF, including Mr. Perfect and Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty, and really kind of, again, pulled the rug away from underneath AWA. And we don't need to talk about what Hulk Hogan did once he got to WWF. He became the Hulk Hogan we kind of remember, and so I'm going to go for that Hulk Hogan defection. But like you said, it's amazing. You could pick his WCW one, you could pick his TNA one, you could pick his defection to NWO. It's just every move he made was
money,
earth-shattering, and money.
Yeah. It's a great pick. It absolutely is a great pick. It just goes to show. I mean, Hogan gets a lot of grief now, and rightly so. His politics and his kind of attitude, he gets all the grief that he should get. But in terms of creating buzz and being the biggest star in wrestling, without a shadow of doubt, he knew how to make money for himself, and he knew how to make big moves. So yeah, it's quite right that he's on this Mount Rushmore at least once anyway.
So you agree with that?
Yeah, it's staying on. So let's go to you, Stuart, for your third pick.
So mine is going, and it's kind of the same term of what I've went with WCW Hulk Hogan. I'm going to go with Chris Jericho AEW. Now I could go Chris Jericho WWE, which is what I thought you were going with, Darren, originally. But I'm taking Chris Jericho AEW, and the reason is I genuinely believe that AEW would not be the name power it is today if it wasn't for Chris Jericho. A lot of the hardcore wrestling, majority of hardcore wrestling fans know Kenny Omega. They know the Young Bucks. They know what Cody Rhodes has done since leaving WWE. But your mainstream people didn't. They don't know really who Kenny Omega is. They don't know who the Young Bucks are, but everyone knows who Chris Jericho is. And for him to sign and to do the announcement in Florida, it was just, it was something that I didn't think I would see. Again, we're talking like the Big Show going to AEW. In a million years, you would never have thought Chris Jericho would leave WWE, let alone sign for another company outside of America, let alone inside of America. But I genuinely feel that Chris Jericho has been one of those people who has always kept up with the times. He's always changed his gimmick. He's always changed the way he is. And it works so well. The Alpha Club, Chris Jericho, is by far my favourite Chris Jericho. I don't know why. I just thought he was just totally badass. I don't know if it's because he got the leash taken off him and he could do what the hell he wanted to. He had so much free reign. But the whole Kenny Omega build-up for New Japan Pro Wrestling and Wrestle Kingdom 13, was it? Or 12? One of them, whichever. I loved it. It was something I hadn't seen from Chris Jericho before. Just the whole aggression coming out of him and that. And it might be because I got to meet him at that time. Yes, I met Chris Jericho. All the best. Happy days. Genuinely nice guy. But I genuinely feel that if it wasn't for Chris Jericho signing for AEW, they would not be where they are right now. And also to put the belt on him as a first champion made total sense because he legit made AEW a force to be reckoned with, like I said previously with Hulk Hogan at WCW. By putting the belt on Chris Jericho, it got so many eyes on them, it got so much buzz. It was all in. The first one wasn't in Chicago, where he dressed up as Pentagon and the lights came up and it was him. Things like that. It was just he had this ability to just make the smallest thing a fireworks show. People say now that Chris Jericho's finished. No, he's not. He's not finished. He's just I don't know. He had little mistakes, but he's got to remember he's 49-year-old. You know, he's not a spring chicken, but he's still at the top of his game at the way he is now. And AEW wouldn't be. You wouldn't have got a John Moxley. You wouldn't have got, you know, the Jack Swagger or Jack Hager or whatever. You wouldn't got all these people if it wasn't for Chris Jericho, because he made people believe that AEW could turn heads, and they have. That's my third pick.
Yeah, and I don't think that the true kind of gravitas of Jericho's move to AEW has even been realised yet, because what he's doing with the younger stars, helping like build them as characters. Yeah. I mean, Orange Cassidy, MJF, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, all got the rub from working with Chris Jericho. And I honestly think he will be back in WWE. I think Vince, he will be one of those people who Vince would take back with open arms.
Yeah, well, that's a Royal Rumble entrance, by the way, right there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so it is a great pick, and it did exactly what you said. It legitimised AEW as, we're not here to mess about. This is going to be a big force in wrestling.
Yeah. I'm not sure AEW happens if Chris Jericho doesn't go to New Japan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Fights Kenny Omega.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because that whole, that captured a lot of people's imagination, and it got...
it captured Chris Jericho's imagination, by the way.
Chris Jericho's imagination, yeah, definitely. And I've forgotten his name, the Impact guy, the manager.
Callis.
It got him involved, and he kind of was a marketing force behind all that. Because like you said, the hardcores, they know who Kenny Omega is and the Bucks are. I love Kenny Omega. I think he's fantastic. There you go. But Jericho is a level above them in wrestling as a TV program.
Mm-hmm. And I would genuinely have put Chris Jericho. So I would have put Chris Jericho as my Mount Rushmore overall. But because I knew I was talking about him here, that's why he's not getting an extra point for me, I'm afraid.
Oh, he's struggling for votes as well. You should have.
Sorry, Chris.
You've done him dirty there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open and honest that Jericho will always be my GOAT. I mean, even the politics and the dodgy decisions aside, in terms of in the ring, there is nobody for me who has reinvented himself and kept himself relevant as well as Jericho. And my favourite introduction to a new company was Jericho when he came on Raw in 1999. I think that's the best entrance of a wrestler ever. And yeah, he's the Painmaker, the suit wearer, the list of Jericho, bit of the bubbler. The guy's a marketing machine, and yeah, I think without him in AEW, we wouldn't be. AEW certainly would not be the company that it is today.
Yep, agreed.
Good pick.
Okay, let's go back to me for my second. And which one of these do I re-go over? For me, there's one standout, not particularly because of how monumental it was in terms of that being a huge moment in wrestling, but for what it kind of signified. For me, it was the first time I really kind of realised that maybe kayfabe was now becoming not a thing. So I'm going to go with Rick Rude. Rude was one of the wrestling world's biggest stars going through the early 80s until he had to retire in the mid-90s. Former Intercontinental Champion, WCW International Heavyweight Champion, United States Champion. And he came from that kind of Minnesota hotbed with the likes of Tom Zenk, Nikita Koloff, Barry Darsow, and Mr. Perfect. But in November of 1997, for me, he destroyed kayfabe when he defected from the WWF to the WCW. He'd actually come back to wrestling in January of 1997. He'd stayed away for 3 years because he collected on an insurance policy, which he had with Lloyd's of London, and he had to retire due to injury. And he had a storyline with Shane Douglas and ECW before doing a little bit of colour commentary over there, and he had a hand in Jerry Lawler picking up wins in that kind of like tiny WWF ECW crossover that was happening at the time. But then we fast forward to August of 1997, and he returned to the WWF as the insurance policy for Chyna, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, a group that obviously we now know as DX, but they weren't known as that at that time. And whilst on screen, he actually seemed like he fitted in with the group, but apparently backstage it was all business. He didn't hang around with the guys after the shows. He would only meet up with them for storylines and scripts. But then we get to the 9th of November, and something happened that made Rick Rude realise that he didn't want to work for this group. He didn't want to work for this company anymore. He watched his faction mates take part in the Montreal Screwjob. And he was 100% in the camp of Bret Hart, and he felt that it was disgusting the way that the former WWF champion had been treated, and he was so disgusted that he rang Eric Bischoff, who was the head of WCW, and told him what had happened and that he wanted out. So Rude told Bischoff that he wasn't actually even on a guaranteed contract, and he was only being paid per appearance. So the night after Survivor Series, Rick Rude turned up to WWF tapings and appeared on Raw with the rest of DX. But Rick was fully aware that those tapings wouldn't air until the next week, which was the 17th. So at Raw, coming from Cornwall, Ontario, he actually appeared in Cincinnati, Ohio, live on Nitro. Which would have been a 12-hour drive, and he was clean shaven, and all he had was his mustache. But on Raw, he had a full-grown beard. So in the ring, we had Bischoff and NWO proceed to absolutely shoot on Shawn Michaels, absolutely shoot on Vince, and just destroy the kayfabe world by slating the two and slating the screw job. He also encouraged Bret to come and join WCW and the NWO, but to add a little bit of an extra twist to this, Rick Rude had also, like I mentioned earlier, he'd been working a little bit with ECW, but ECW's show was actually syndicated, so it wasn't shown live. It was on at different times in different markets. So Rick Rude became the only person in wrestling history to be on Raw, Nitro, and ECW TV all on the same night. So my pick is Rick Rude.
I was going to pick him. I genuinely was going to pick him, and for that reason. And it's just the shithouse level of it. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that he came in clean shaven. I love that, man. I love stuff like that. As much as I'm a positive person, I do love a wee bit like that. You know, you can't go wrong there.
I mean, the Bischoff tried to time it minute for minute that when Rude would be on Raw and he'd be on Nitro at the same time, and I don't think they quite pulled it off. I think he was out by a few minutes, but can you imagine how good that would have been to be flicking channel going, what the fuck is going on here? But yeah, it was a massive moment for kayfabe for me, and yeah, it's a big moment of a defection.
Yeah, so it's a great pick. He made the most of that defection for sure. And like I say, he's written himself into the history books. People always remember that. People always talk about it. I didn't know he appeared on the ECW the same night as well. I didn't know it was a freeway visual trick. I thought it was just two.
One that could never happen again.
Well, not at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah. With two of them dead and buried, I would assume it's probably never going to happen again.
That's the thing, though. Imagine that happening today. It's impossible. I genuinely believe all the contracts and all that kind of stuff now, that'll be impossible to rectify. It will be impossible because I would love to have been a fly in the wall in the WWE camp when that was found out anyway.
Yeah,
because I think that was the second person. Because I think Macho Man as well. I believe Vince was wondering where Macho Man was to do commentary, and then somebody went, Vince, check TNT. He's on Nitro, and Vince had no idea. He was trying to find him in the locker.
It also happened with another one who may come up depending on whether vetoes are used later on. But Paul, is that staying on?
Yeah, it is staying on. And you were just saying there it couldn't happen again because of contracts and stuff. I mean, it was still a bit of a shit show back then, wasn't it? And like the Monday Night Wars couldn't happen again like that.
No.
You turn up for work and your talent wouldn't be there.
It's stuff like this where Vince started insisting on no compete clauses being in the contracts, because he'd been essentially screwed over by so many talents doing this and working on handshake agreements that now he locks down everybody to a contract.
Yeah.
Which
also, back then he used it. Sorry, go for it.
No, you can totally understand why.
Yeah. But back then he WWF were in financial problems as well, so they couldn't even fight it, even if there were contracts in place and they were being breached. They didn't have the money to fight it.
Yep. So if it's staying on, let's go to you, Stuart, for your final pick, sir.
Right, how long have we got for this one? Because I love this one. I love this one. Right. So my last pick is going to go to. I'm Scottish. I'm a Rangers fan. So's Drew McIntyre. He's my boy. I'm picking Drew McIntyre, right? And it's for anyone who's listening to this who doesn't understand what Drew McIntyre has done to British wrestling, please look it up, because if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be NXT UK. There wouldn't be nothing severely close to that. And it's generally, I believe, down to Drew McIntyre. So he's left WWE on I wouldn't say bad terms, but it wasn't great terms in regards to what his personal life was going through. And for anyone who's watched this documentary on WWE Network, you'll understand why. So to get a bit of backstory, ICW, something that I am so mad in love with, Insane Championship Wrestler, Mark Dallas from Glasgow. He's got an absolute gem on his hands with this. And Drew McIntyre was the very first ICW heavyweight champion. It was a heavyweight championship back then. So Drew McIntyre's left WWE. He's expecting a call from Mark Dallas. Doesn't receive it for the first few days because they're friends, which you can understand why. But then, and I've generally spoke to a lot of people in ICW. The referee Thomas Cairns, Simon Cassidy, the announcer Billy Kirkwood, the commentator. They didn't know this was coming along. They didn't know Drew Galloway was actually coming back, or Drew McIntyre, whichever way you call him, was called Drew Galloway when he wasn't in WWE ring. So the lights have went out and it's come back, and for people that have not seen it, he's got the hood over. They don't know who it is. He takes the hood off. It's Drew Galloway. The place erupts. He's got a totally different look. If you remember when Drew McIntyre was in 3MB, he was clean shaven. His chest was clean shaven. He kind of looked like the pretty boy. Whereas this is now 3-4 weeks later, he's now got a beard. He's now got he's looking very, I don't care. He's looking masculine and stunning in my eyes. I love him, right? He's an absolute stud. And it just totally made a massive pop within not just ICW, but British wrestling, because they were thinking there's a legitified superstar back. And then what he done with ICW was just unthinkable. He took him to a different heights. He just took a mega star, and not just for ICW, but for himself. So what he done was he was getting the gigs, he was getting the contracts. He then became ICW heavyweight champion. In 2015, he went over to New York, and it was Family Wrestling Championship, I think it was right in saying. He fought Matt Hardy in New York for the ICW Championship. He then made it the ICW World Championship. Something so small, but it's actually, when you think about it, it's huge, especially for a company like ICW. It's massive for them. But then not just ICW. He goes to Evolve. He goes to Dragon Gate USA. He has his big run in Impact Wrestling. This is all because he's reevaluated himself and reinvented himself in the way he is. And now look at where he is. Now look today. Okay, he's not WWE's champion, but what a year he's had. 2020 Royal Rumble winner, NXT former world champion, two-time WWE World Champion. The guy is a legitimate superstar, and I genuinely believe if it wasn't for his entrance back in ICW, none of this would have happened. And he's openly said, because he was going to Australia, he was going to America, he was going to Canada, he was fighting in Germany, he was fighting in wherever in Europe. He was the first travelling world champion since Ric Flair. And we were talking about how we were talking about Kurt Angle, how he was Mr. Champion. At one point, so was Drew Galloway. He had championships from Australia, had championships from Germany, had championships from the UK, Ireland, America, Canada, all these places around the world. And he was, and the people he was wrestling against, Johnny Gargano, he was having tag team championships with him, Marty Scurll, Ricochet, all these people that are now legit stars. The guy's just, in my opinion, the guy can't do anything wrong. And it all started, if you've not seen it, if you've not seen Drew Galloway come back to ICW, please check out on YouTube. And it was just such a marvelous pop that was, and that's the thing about wrestling today. There's so much social media that a lot of things are no longer surprises. But when those little surprises do come along, they just change the whole aspect and these are the things why I love professional wrestling, for little things like that. So that's my final pick, is Drew Galloway or Drew McIntyre.
It's a great pick. Absolutely is a great pick. Do you think he was saddled with a lot of pressure in his initial WWE run, with him being labelled as the chosen one? Do you think that worked against him?
I think, if I'm being honest with you, I think that didn't help matters, no. But if you actually think about it as well, he didn't really have a big... He kind of... I'm going to digress, but I talk about the X Factor a lot. And the reason being, Elton John... I'm a huge Elton John fan, but he hates the X Factor because what happens is people become stars overnight. They don't have the background of going through the clubs. They don't have the pubs. They don't have being heckled. This was exactly the same with Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway then. He was very much... He went from, Irish Whip Wrestling and ICW straight into the big time. He went straight into Florida Championship Wrestling, but he was only there for a few weeks, and then he was on SmackDown. So you're looking at such a small career, and he's been expected to be the chosen one. So I think it's a bit of both. I think the expectations were far too high for him, and I think at the same time, you're a youngster, you've made your dream. You're in the WWE. You're the Intercontinental Champion. You're in your head thinking you've made it. It can easily happen. People do have these perceptions that are incorrect, and only through hindsight and maturity do you realise that you made a mistake as such, or not a mistake, but you could have done things differently.
Yeah. So it was a case of too much too soon, and he wasn't in the right kind of headspace to be the guy that he was pinned to be. Needed that breakaway, like I said, reinvent himself. Come back, and it's been the one of the best things in WWE for a hell of a long time.
Totally
the
agree.
Most legitimate champion that we've had in since Brock Lesnar. It's as simple as that. He made the match with Brock Lesnar absolutely made Drew Galloway a massive, massive star in it, and he's spent a year and he's just been the face of Raw. It's as simple and clear as that.
During the hardest period ever, nobody would have imagine. When you think about it, the one bit that made Drew Galloway, so I keep calling Drew Galloway, Drew McIntyre legit, was the Claymore to Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble 2020. I genuinely feel that Brock Lesnar gets a lot of slate, but see, when he actually does want to give back to the company, there's no one better to give back than what Brock Lesnar can do. The 2-minute sell from the Claymore, just all of that just totally made McIntyre look an absolute fucking star. But then who would have imagined 12 months later he had to have 2 championships and not a single person had actually seen them live with the title. So as much as he's done such a great job in being a champion, you have to take your hat off and think what he's went through and still made himself look a great champion. It's just, it's such a... I can't speak highly enough about him, to be honest. And it's not because he's Scottish and Rangers fan, honestly.
I mean, it must have been so hard to be told you're going to be the face of the brand, but you can't get that fan reaction. You're basically performing to silence, and for him to still be able to get over his character and still be able to get over the emotion, I think that's testament to how good of a wrestler and how good of a character he is.
And the one thing that I loved as well, that was, if I believe it right, wasn't meant to happen. He just done it on the off chance. Was when he won the title of Lesnar at WrestleMania. It was the pointing at the camera saying thank you. Do you remember that? He genuinely just did that, thinking they're going to edit it out anyway. It's no problem. But that just kind of solidified how much he's went through from being 3MB to being where he is on that moment and at the grandest stage of them all, albeit the Performance Center, it is still WrestleMania. And in my eyes, I think it was one of the greatest WrestleManias considering what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reaching to the camera is just so emotional. It's such, it's a face of somebody who has gone through a journey to get to where he was pinned to be a decade before. Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah,
and the best thing is the story's not even over. He's going to be multi-time world champion by the end of his career,
which is fantastic because he's still at a good age as well, and he just looks a star. And I keep saying it, but I genuinely like, you know that emoji with the love hearts in the eyes. That's me when he comes out with the Claymore and the kilt on every time.
I mean, Paul gets like that when he sees Flash Morgan Webster.
Well, Billy Kirkwood and I both agreed that we shag him, or I would let him shag us, one of the two.
I think it would probably be him doing the shag.
Yeah,
definitely. That's fine.
It's a great picking, a great round off to your Mount Rushmore. Yeah. It's a solid pick.
He's just got a great character. It would have been so easy to just give up and just let his career, or not even give up. Just go on the indies, lose your shape a little bit, and just get paydays because you drew McIntyre.
I mean, how many wrestlers have done that? How many wrestlers have got a certain level in WWE, coasted, and then dropped down and lived off that gimmick for the? I mean, all these conventions, it's full of former WWE wrestlers, but Drew didn't accept that. He knew he had to change. He went back, he reinvented himself, and he's come back a better person from it.
Yeah, and how many wrestlers have come back to this level? Once they've messed up and been released once, has anyone come back and gone to the top of the company?
I think people
if they have, it's a very short list.
Yeah.
People have came back, but I think the way he left. So, like, you could think of your Kurt Angles, you could think of Jeff Hardy's, they've left and came back and won a championship, but the way he left was kind of like out the back door. You know, you're kind of like away and fix yourself, where a lot of guys, especially during that period where he had the problems with the alcohol, he was very open and honest about how he had liked the party and that. People would have fell off the wagon so much, but credit to where he is and look where he is now. You know, it's amazing to see flying the flag for Britain, you know, because it's just, like I say, and not just that, you got to look at British wrestling now. I genuinely believe, like I say, if it wasn't for Galloway, they wouldn't be where it is now. And I genuinely believe that British wrestling right now is as high as it's ever been, and it's a lot to do because of McIntyre Galloway.
Yeah, inspirational. There's a lot of wrestlers who'll be looking at him and thinking, I can now do it. I can now be WWF champion.
I have to say though, I was speaking to Grado, and he was telling a story about how he came back after his first spell of 3MB, and they're walking down Glasgow Street, and somebody stopped Grado and McIntyre and said, "Can I get a photo?" And they went, "Yeah, of course." And the guy handed the camera to McIntyre and said, "Right here, Grado, come on."
Can you imagine looking at that photo now and thinking, "Oh, I could have had my photo with Drew McIntyre." Jesus.
Grado started going, I take it, I'll be getting the one used to taking the photos now, because there'll be no wanting a photo of me now if you see the two of them together.
That's an absolutely amazing story. But yeah, it's a great way to round off your Mount Rushmore. Tolly, potentially round our Mount Rushmore off.
Yeah, well, I've got to go for you mentioned in your previous one.
If it's another Hulk Hogan, I'm ready to it. I'll just let you know.
It's a TNA run now.
No, you mentioned it in your Rick Rude. It was a moment so shocking that Rude handed in his resignation, and it pissed off a lot of wrestlers. And it was barely a defection, really. It didn't catch anyone by surprise, but it was obviously Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart defecting to WCW. He's still probably the most infamous, most compelling moment in wrestling history. I've gone back reading kind of all the lead up to it today, and it's amazing. And you see something new every time you look into the story. And it's mad it ever happened. But It did. So take you back through a few of the things that led up to it, I guess. So obviously we had Bret Hart. Once Hogan had left WWF, it kind of fell to Bret Hart and I guess the Undertaker as well to be the big stars in WWF, and Hart really took it on. He really did become the biggest star in WWF, and it led to him in 1996 earning himself a 20-year contract with WWE, and it was probably a bit of a mistake by Vince. In that contract, it gave him a 30-day notice period and creative control in those final 30 days, which was probably the starting point to what led to all this inserting those clauses in the contract. As in come November 1997, he handed in that notice and then signed a 2-year contract with WCW. And the reason Bret Hart gave for that was he was unhappy with the direction of WWF. He thought it was becoming smutty. He didn't like the Attitude Era. He felt he couldn't watch it with his children anymore. He couldn't watch it with his dad anymore. He just felt it just wasn't a product he could put his name to anymore. That was exacerbated by he hated Shawn Michaels. Really, they hated each other, and obviously the plan was for him to drop the world title to Shawn Michaels in Montreal at Survivor Series, but Bret was very keen to point out that Shawn Michaels was never one particularly willing to do any of those jobs himself. He famously kind of 3 times with the Intercontinental title not put someone over with it. He'd either left the company or got injured or walked out, threatened to resign. So Bret just wasn't keen to leave, to put Shawn Michaels over, particularly in Canada. The way this came about was, like I say, Bret had signed the 20-year contract, but in September 1997, Vince approached Bret before a Raw and asked him to renegotiate the contract and asked him if he could push more than half of his salary out to the back end of the contract because WWF were in financial trouble. Not surprisingly, Hart didn't agree. Later that month, Vince approached Hart again and told him he was going to have to intentionally breach their contract together, and that he should probably think about going to WCW because they'll be able to pay him the money he wants. So Vince was really at this stage trying to push Bret because the contract was too expensive and it was too much of a burden. But Hart decided to exercise his reasonable creative control, and he had one simple condition upon his leaving, and he wasn't going to lose the title to Shawn Michaels in Canada. He felt that the story they'd just been told, and remember this is 1997 with the really hot Bret Hart angle, where he was a Canadian hero, hated in America but loved around the rest of the world. It was a gimmick that just was really hot, and he said all of that story would be ruined if his final act in WWF was to lose to Shawn Michaels in Canada. So throughout October, negotiations between McMahon, Hart, Michaels, and even Eric Bischoff would take place regarding the timings of what would happen when losing the title, when he'd go to WCW, and even up to the night in Montreal, they didn't know what was going to happen in the match. So Hart and Michaels would agree amongst themselves on a DQ finish, and apparently they'd agreed on having like the most amazing match to send Bret Hart away kind of into the sunset. Obviously Bret was happy with this, and that's what they went with. And then Bret would hand Vince the title next evening on Raw. But instead, we know what happened. Michaels put Bret Hart in a sharpshooter, as was supposed to happen. Earl Hebner was knocked out cold in the corner of the ring, as Earl Hebner tended to be. They agreed Brett would reverse the sharpshooter, and then Owen and Bulldog would eventually run in, and more referees, and it would obviously just descend into chaos. There'd be a disqualification, but Earl Hebner miraculously popped back up and told the bell, the what's the guy at the side? Timekeeper to ring the bell. Vince very quickly echoed to ring the bell, and Bret Hart had been screwed out of the title. And it was just even now watching it, it like I said, it's just insane to see it happen. You can't believe that this ever happened. McMahon would obviously famously get knocked out cold by Bret in the showers when he tried to go and explain to him.
Spat on as well.
Was that spat on in the immediate aftermath? Yeah. Bret right in WCW in the air, which the crowd seemed to enjoy, which kind of been which must have been a worrying sign for Vince at the time. And like I say, even kind of Vince's most loyal subjects were angry at him. The Undertaker confronted him. Earl Hebner had apparently ran out of the arena and got into a car that was waiting for him, took him away, and he had the next night off of Raw. When Bret confronted Shawn Michaels, he swore blind. He had nothing to do with it. And you'll see, Bret. I refuse to carry the title on Raw tomorrow. I won't say anything bad about you. Wait until tomorrow. You'll see I was no part of it. And obviously, we know Shawn Michaels did carry the title into the next Raw, and he did badmouth Bret Hart, and clearly was a part of what went down.
Absolutely, absolutely was.
And you just got to put it on it, because what could have been kind of an amicable parting of ways, a celebration of Bret Hart, what Bret Hart did in WWF, turned into just the most ill-spirited of defections. But like I said, just infamous. Yeah.
I put this on. I don't know if you've seen it. I put on Twitter on Saturday about the Montreal Screwjob and who was right, who was wrong. I've heard a few of them saying it was a work, and I have to say, by the way, it's just too ridiculous to rule that out, in my opinion.
You can't rule it out.
I mean, the only people who genuinely know are the people involved, and both sides are adamant that the other is in the wrong. So, I mean,
if it's a work,
it could have easily been a.
Yeah, if it's a work, it's too well done. Like you see the additional security start turning up and stuff like that, and I just don't think they'd be able to orchestrate it that well without them doing it for real.
The other thing as well, though, is that ironically that ruined WCW in regards to how they perceived Bret Hart when he went over, because if I'm right in saying they try to rectify or replicate the Montreal Screwjob several times on WCW television, and it kind of went with Bret over. It's fine, it went with Bret for the rest of his career, let's be honest. But the fact that they kept trying to replicate, and I believe in saying that was why Bret became a referee in the Sting match against Hogan, because they were trying to do a Montreal Screwjob, and they just didn't know what to do with them. They didn't know what to do with them, and they thought that was the best thing to keep, reminiscing on his WWE career, which in theory was not the right thing to do. Bret, you could just let him run with the title like he was in WWF.
Yeah.
And if it didn't happen, he wouldn't have been injured by the kick from Goldberg. He wouldn't have had to retire early, and he wouldn't have spent so many years stewing about what happened and really kind of being bitter towards wrestling, not just of WWE, towards wrestling in general. It really kind of ate away at the guy for years and years. And all happened because Vince tried to tie him down to a long-term contract that he could ill afford.
Yeah.
And he still hates like people that were involved, because I'll never forget Triple H against Undertaker at WrestleMania 28, Hell in a Cell. Bret Hart gave that a 4 out of 10. I'm sorry, but if that was anybody else in that match except Triple H or Shawn, he would have gave it a lot higher than that. But because those two are in it, he hates them. Still hates them today. I don't care what happened on that Raw 2010. There is still very much bad blood between them.
Yeah, he does hate him, and it clearly does just go back to that. He was the star of the show. He was the biggest thing back in 96, 97, but Vince clearly wanted it to be Shawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was because he viewed Shawn as a future, or Shawn was a cheaper future. I don't know.
Oh, he had so much power backstage that Brett never. Brett was very much a yes man, let's be honest, where Shawn was, going back to our favourite friend here, Shane Douglas, he found out the hard way what Shawn Michaels can do backstage. And Brett wouldn't do that. Brett would do what's best for business, whereas Shawn was doing what's best for Shawn. Which, in theory, is why he wasn't in my top 4, my Mount Rushmore, purely because of his attitude in those eras. You know, when was it they had the Iron Man match? Was it WrestleMania 12?
Yeah.
So the WrestleMania 13 was supposed to be Shawn replicating that and giving it to Bret Hart. He was supposed to go over, but all of a sudden he loses his smile and has to vacate the title. You know, just little things like that.
Yeah.
I watched a Cultaholic video recently, and it was on about Shawn Michaels' run with titles in the WWF, and he's actually dropped more titles in terms of like giving them up than being pinned or submitted for him. He only ever got pinned for titles like 3 times in his career, and yet he dropped them 5 times because he didn't want to do the job to people.
It's not a surprise, and I guess those were latter in his career as well. He was probably the losing ones.
Yeah.
Well, one of those 3 was when Undertaker said he's going to kick the shit out of him unless he drops it to Austin at WrestleMania 14.
I mean, one of the more infamous ones, and it shows how evil of a politician he was the European Championship with Bulldog. Bulldog's sister, I think, had cancer, and he wanted to win it as a testament to her. And Shawn came with, "Oh no, it'll mean so much more if you let me win it, and then you can beat me for it." And that never happened. He won the title, kept hold of it, and then dropped it to Triple H, which is just absolutely ridiculous how that went down. Yeah, it was so bad for politics in his first run anyway.
Then he found God.
Luckily, he kind of redeemed himself. Yeah, when he found Jesus.
But it's something I found in researching this today, going back over it, and it's something I've not come across before, and I don't know if you've come across it. Bret Hart wrote an open letter to Shawn Michaels in the Calgary Sun newspaper about a month before Survivor Series. And you talk about pipe bombs. This is one of the best pipe bombs I've ever read. I could read it to you. It's quite long, but I suggest you go Google it, go find it, and it is Bret Hart's open letter to Shawn Michaels, and it definitely breaks down the fourth wall, and it's nasty. Deservedly nasty, but I've never seen it before. And I was using this Dave Meltzer Wrestling Observer annual from 1997, and some of the stuff they've got in here from 1997 is amazing. And it's got that letter reprinted in there, and he went for the throat.
Sorry, I need to give an honourable mention, by the way, to Jeff Jarrett. He was going to be in my top 4. Just for the shithouse level of him going between WWF and WCW on several occasions like a fucking tennis ball. I have to just mention him because I just love what he did. He was all about money, and he done everything right. He was just shithouse level to the absolute highest standard. Sorry, I just had to put that one in there.
He's someone who I spoke about on another podcast recently, and he gets a lot of grief because of when he left after the Good Housekeeping match with China. He gets a lot of kind of shit to say he held Vince McMahon up for money, but he actually didn't. He saved Vince McMahon a hell of a lot of money with that match. He basically what he was owed would be his fees for like August, September, October. But he said, cut me a check for $300,000, which was like a half of what he would have been due, and we'll just end it amicably like this. And Vince was happy to do that, but then Vince let out the story that he'd been held up just as like shitting on someone on the way out, like Vince tends to do. But yeah, Jarrett took a lot of grief for that, and he was only basically doing a favour and kind of like trying to cut ties off cleanly rather than wait for checks to come through.
I've been lucky enough to have an interaction with Jeff Jarrett through emails and that, and I have to say he seems one of the nicest guys as well going. He's just a genuine nice guy, and someone that doesn't get the respect he deserves in regards to the wrestling world, because for what he's done in regards to wrestling is just, the guy's just an absolute genius in my eyes. I've got a lot. He's one of them again that you don't actually respect until it's too late and you have to now look back on his career. But yeah, I've got a lot of time for Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I mean, former member of Bullet Club. Can't go wrong with that.
Exactly. Albeit for like a month. But anyway, he was still part of it.
Yeah, he was. I can't, in good conscience, veto the Montreal Screwjob for it, just because how big of a moment it was in wrestling. I mean, the picks I had left were Lex Luger when he showed up on Nitro, which was monumental, and that was for me. That's the actual start of the Monday Night War. That's the first real shot across the bow from Nitro.
Yeah, and then sorry, why was that done in a shopping centre? I can't remember that.
Oh, it's because it was the first time that Nitro was being held, and it was the first live, and Eric Bischoff wanted it to get as many eyes on it as possible. And the shopping centre that they were in was called the Mall of America. It was the world's biggest shopping centre. So it was just kind of like the spectacle of it.
Always reminds me of that in Deck Saturday Night Takeaway. You always see the computer in that. It just always reminds me of that night. I'm expecting Lex Luger just to walk out with that shitty shirt on and start doing that stuff.
I mean, to be fair, Bischoff did have a history of like giving away big shows like that. I mean, how many times did they run Bash at the Beach, which was on an actual beach? The Sturgis rallies with a Hog Wilder and Road Wild, where the Barkers didn't even have to pay for a ticket. Yeah, he loved giving away stuff like that. The other one I had was obviously Ric Flair going to WWF, all that stuff with taking the belt and Jim Herd kind of shitting on him on the way out and wanting to call him Spartacus and making him cut his hair and stuff like that. And then we got the WCW towel on WWF TV, which later on down the aisle actually led to WCW doing the same thing with the women's title with Alundra Blaze and Medusa. So they were the other two picks that I would have ponied up.
Yeah, I had Flair. Exactly the same one. The Spartacus is ridiculous. Who tries to repackage the Nature Boy?
Yeah, and the fact that they fired him as he was setting off to go to a match to drop the belt, it was just ridiculous. But
the one I was going to put on Mike Awesome when he moved to WCW from ECW, and the whole background story with Taz and in that bingo hall when he had to drop the ECW title and that was a mad story.
With security, and he literally had to leave after the match because he weren't getting out of that show alive. Otherwise, that would be those ECW fans were hardcore.
However, if you remember as well, 2005 when he came back, he still was not forgotten about that. He was not the nicest person to be. Well, they weren't really they weren't as forthcoming as other wrestlers were with Mike Awesome.
Yeah, they did not forgive. They certainly did not forgive.
the other one I had was Moxley, because that was just electric when he showed it. I can't remember. Was it Double or Nothing?
Double or Nothing, yeah. For me, it was either going to be Moxley or Jericho, but I just thought Jericho has given too much more for AEW than what Moxley has. That's what.
Yeah, and I agree on that. I think Jericho's done more. I think the moment that Moxley appeared was
far greater.
It was just amazing, and it was weird the way WWE played all that when he was leaving. They were just very, very nice to him.
Nonchalant.
They must have known.
Yeah, I think that whole releasing of the press release saying that Jonathan Goody's contract runs out in so and so, I think that was a play to maybe pluck at his heartstrings and get him to re-sign. but clearly it didn't work. And what I do respect about him, he didn't shit on the company on the way out. He did everything that they asked him to do, even the stuff that he absolutely hated, the stuff with the syringe and calling people smelly and wearing gas masks. He said on the Wade Keller podcast he hated every second of it, and he tried pitching all these other ideas and he was just getting nowhere with them. And he lost his love for the business. I mean, everybody's seen the Stone Cold Broken Skull sessions with him, and you can tell there he didn't care anymore. He wasn't in love with wrestling, and AEW and New Japan has certainly kind of like rekindled that love for him. So yeah, that would have been an absolutely brilliant pick as well.
And also, he's not shat on WWE since he's went over like others have. That's one thing with AEW that I didn't like is the fact that they just keep on nitpicking at WWE. Just, focus on your own product and, just rather than constantly have a nit battle with another company. John Moxley's went over there. He's been John Moxley. He's not mentally okay. Dean Ambrose has been mentioned a couple of times, but not from him. And I've got a lot of admiration, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with him next. We know what's going to happen because he's having a burn. I mean, when he comes back from that, I can't wait for that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good point as well. I refer to him as John Moxley, whereas most people who leave WWF, I'd never change their name. Like Ty Dillinger is not Sean Spears to me; he's still Ty Dillinger.
Mm.
But
Rusev, not Miro, is Rusev.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm not someone who was aware of John Moxley before he became Dean Ambrose, so I haven't got like that tied to him before. But he's completely, yes, you are John Moxley.
Soldier.
Yeah.
And the good thing is he's said in interviews, I think it was with Chris Van Vliet, that the door is not closed with WWE. Said he would, if the situation was right, he would go back there, and he's not burnt any bridges, which nowadays in wrestling, I mean, a lot of AEW people who've come over from WWE have burnt that bridge. They have shat on the company, and he's certainly been one who hasn't. So yeah, I've got a lot of time for John Moxley, and just this passion for wrestling's back.
Yeah, you can see it in him.
Never say never. You got to think, what would Hogan do?
He's got impact to Ring of Honor. I'm expecting to see Hulk Hogan at AEW one day. I'm genuinely being serious there. I'm expecting to see it. He's been everywhere else.
He would absolutely do it. He would 100% do it.
He's doing a shot, yeah. I like that.
Talking about John Moxley when he left, the only person I can think of that had that kind of same, release in regards to being nice about it was Matt Hardy, because remember it was well known that he was going to be leaving for about 6 weeks before, and then Randy Orton wrote him off, and there was all that speculation of will he be coming back to WWE and NXT, or will he be going to AEW? And obviously that's the one thing about COVID that really annoys me. I'd love to have seen the pop with Brooke and Matt Hardy arriving at AEW. Obviously that will never be now.
Yeah, that is a shame.
It is. Those have been two really top quality Mount Rushmores. What we need from you now, Stuart, sir, is we need a topic for a future guest.
So I'm going to go on the theme of John Moxley and Kenny Omega, how they've got this mad barbed wire death match coming on at Revolution. It's not for everyone's cup of tea, I understand.
Oh, ridiculous.
I fucking love it. I genuinely love it. I am so excited for it. So my one for you next week will be the Mount Rushmore of hardcore wrestlers.
Interesting.
Love it.
I mean,
that's going to be a good one.
It's been hardcore wrestling has been going since the dawn of wrestling, pretty much. So there's definitely a lot to go at. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to researching that and seeing what we come up with.
I'm looking forward to hearing your picks. I've got my Mount Rushmore in my head. I'm not going to tell you, obviously, but I will. I'll DM you at a later stage once I've heard the show. But looking forward to what you're going to come up with that anyway.
I'm going to.
I can't wait for the barbed wire match. I know you don't like it, Dan. I don't give a shit. I love it.
It's not even that I don't like it. I think my issue is AEW came with we are going to be different to the WWE. We are going to be sports centric, wins and losses matter, all that stuff. And slowly over time, I felt that they become WWE like. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I'm a massive WWE, or I was a massive WWE fan, and I think the ring quality, the work is is one of the best that we've got around now. It's just the if you're going to kind of slate WWE, don't do the same things that WWE are doing. That's my issue with it. That's all. I mean, I think the match will be fun. I really think it'll be fun. It's just it doesn't fit with how AEW presented themselves as a company at the beginning. That's all.
Yeah. I think they're already finding though. It depends what they want to be. If they genuinely want to be the biggest wrestling company in the world, and I assume that is probably Tony Khan's ambition, I think they're already finding that they have to be more like WWE. Yeah. Because yes, they can compete with NXT and they can beat NXT on a Wednesday night. They're nowhere near competing with the main shows, and they won't be because that is the type of wrestling that's popular. They've already captured the hardcores, but once you've captured them, there's no more to capture. We're all already there.
They've got basically. I would say AEW is 60% anti WWE fans, 40% wrestling fans. That's the way I see it anyway. And I genuinely believe that 60% isn't going to leave. They could put on a proper WrestleMania show, Survivor Series show. The anti-WWE, pro-AEW fans, they're going to love it regardless. It's trying to capture that other amount now and trying to, because I love AEW. I'm not slighting AEW by any way, shape or form, but they're maintaining a level. They're not rising. They're just maintaining.
It's almost a stagnant. They become like stagnant.
It's like a glass ceiling. It's like a glass ceiling they can't get through just now. And I understand why they're doing it because, like what you said, Dan, how you want it to be anything that WWE aren't doing. WWE are not going to do barbed wire matches, so I understand that concept. I also understand that it's going to get maybe some CZW fans or some like proper deathmatch fans who aren't tuned in. They might want to watch it. I get that, and again going back to the Big Show scenario. They're getting people talking about their product. Whether it's positive or negative, people know. I mean, 90% of wrestling fans know that Revolution is going to be a barbed wire explosion match between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. Can anyone tell me what the next NXT, pay-per-view is going to be? Can anyone tell me what the next WWE pay-per-view is going to be? You know what I mean? I understand that they're not being discussed yet.
Are you saying you're not looking forward to Fastlane? That 8-star pay-per-view? How dare you?
You know what really annoys me about that, right? See, going back, it was Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania. Where the fuck's Fastlane came from?
It didn't need Fastlane.
It did just let WrestleMania go through.
Completely unnecessary. The other thing I think about AEW, obviously we've got all the talk about the Forbidden Door opening. Mm-hmm. Kazuchika Okada, my favorite wrestler in the world, Kazuchika Okada, he's not going to get any more viewers to AEW because all the Kazuchika Okada fans are already watching it. Yeah. It is going to be a Big Show is going to bring in more viewers than Okada would.
However, they've just announced that Shaquille O'Neal is fighting Cody Rhodes next week in a mixed gender tag match.
Yeah, but that'll get viewers.
NBA
will, and the best thing if AEW are serious about really pushing and breaking into that stronghold of WWE, you need to get those WWE fans to turn, and they will turn when you put in on a product that they are used to, that they know. Unfortunately, as passionate as we are on wrestling Twitter, 90% of WWE fans are not on Twitter. They don't know Twitter from Adam. They don't know what's going on. They're not in this cool group that we're in, I suppose. So they don't know Kenny Omega. They don't know what Cody Rhodes is up to. They need a big move like Big Show or even someone like Randy Orton, someone who they can go, wow, I know him from WWE. Let me go and see what's happening over on AEW. And that's how they draw. And you have to be like WWE to be able to compete with WWE.
What does annoy me, though, is you got likes of Arn Anderson saying, having, what's the guy's name? Bad Bunny. I feel so old. I have no idea who Bad Bunny is, by the way. But anyway, he's saying, having people like that is stupid. That totally tarnishes your company. Whereas now, he's going to be walking to the ring on Wednesday with Cody Rhodes against Shaquille O'Neal. So is that not the pot calling the kettle black there?
Yeah.
the best part of that was when he said, if these people aren't wrestling fans, what they're doing in our business. Bad Bunny is a massive wrestling fan. He did a song called Booker T, for fuck's sake. Okay. He loves wrestling. He's got the 4 best-selling pieces of merchandise currently in WWE. The guy loves wrestling, and that's how you build a fan base, by drawing in those mainstream.
WrestleMania 1. Just look at WrestleMania 1 card. Muhammad Ali, bloody what's the boy, Liberace. You know. Yeah. That's how wrestling
became. Captain Lou Albano.
Captain Lou Albano, yeah.
But that's how wrestling became what it is today, because of the Rock and Wrestling. Simple as that. You know. Why change things? I always say, if it's not broken, don't change it.
No. Arn Anderson would never have signed Thunder Lips from Rocky III.
Or Mr. T.
Or LT Taylor, or whatever he was called. Well, Stuart, this has been great fun. I've absolutely loved this. I'm glad that you agreed to come on the show. Tell everybody where they can get hold of you on social media, and get involved in the conversations that you start there.
Sure, I'll just talk over your wash machine if that's all right. So
yeah, I know it's so loud, isn't it?
Is that what it was?
I don't know what you're laughing at. You just got your coffee 5 minutes ago. I noticed that. I know.
Yeah,
well... 2 hours to get your coffee, for fuck's sake. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's slawson1417. That's slawson1417. What you're going to find there is, like Darren said, there's a lot of discussions. I like having chats. I like hearing everyone's opinion. Every opinion does matter to me. We have fun with polls. We have fun with discussions. It's not just wrestling. We've got movies, sports, computer games, everything. Just, anything that pops into my head goes on our Twitter page. And it's just, let's have some fun. Everything is all good in my hood. That's really me in a nutshell. And apologies if I went too long, by the way. I realised the time and I thought, holy shit, what's happened there?
Absolutely not a problem. The longer the better for us. We love the stories. We love the debate. So yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Love it. We love tangents. I love the ones that go off in tangents.
I've had an absolute blast, guys. So thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed that.
It's been brilliant.
You are more than welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Tolly, your favourite time of the week, though?
Yeah, well, I've got a good excuse to get through it quick tonight because we have gone on a bit, haven't we? so you can follow us over on Twitter. He is at Dej Kirkby, DEJ Kirkby. I'm at Rain Counter. We're both at Badlands Pod, and we're both on a range of different kinds of podcasts. And if you go to your favorite podcast provider and type in the following, you'll find them and lots of other cool content creators as well. So if you go over and you subscribe to Visionaries Global Media, Darren's got plenty on there. They're all good fun to listen to. You subscribe to 5 Nerds Go. I'm over there. Darren's usually with me as well. It's Shooting the Sports-ish. If you want to go venture away from wrestling and into the more real sports world, if you like.
Oh. And it's real to me, damn it.
And of course on Chairshot Radio, where you can find our newest Badlands episodes every single Thursday. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and listen again next Thursday. Would love to have your ears.
You're missing one, sir. You are missing one.
Oh, Love Wrestling. Love Wrestling. Yeah. Yes. Go over and check out, follow Love Wrestling at Love Wrestling, and also check out the YouTube page on Sunday brunch. Me and Darren will be appearing on that every now and again. We're really excited to be doing that. Mm-hmm. So plenty of stuff there. Go follow all that and like it and subscribe it and whatever else you need to do to boost our profile. and always use your head. We'll speak to you next week.
thechairshot.com. Always use your head.